Hey, everybody. How's it going? This is Rob Turley, your host at Down the Rabbit Hole podcast. And I am pretty excited about this one because you're going to learn a little bit about what your bosses don't tell you when you get promoted. You're going to learn about creating a dynamic system that works for your sales team and a bunch of other little tips, tricks, and other exciting materials that you can apply to your business today if you wanted to. So I'm excited about that. I have a very special guest with me here. This is Prateek Mathur. He's here with us, and he's going to introduce himself because, again, everybody knows this. I'm not great at introducing people, so I let them do it themselves. It's better that way.
Thank you so much for having me here, Rob. As you mentioned, I've been in sales all my life. I've had almost 17 to 18 years of sales experience. I've had the opportunity to work with organizations that were either starting up or organizations that were established and were looking to start up sales teams. So in a way, I feel like, over the last 17, 18 years, all I've really done is help organizations build a structure and of course, help them get a lot more revenue than before. And over the last couple of years, I'd say like over the last 2 years on the side, I was, helping newer sales managers really get better at what they are supposed to be doing. And that is leading people, coaching people, ensuring that their teams hit their goals. And what I realized over the last 2 years is that, I'm not that scalable. And that's when I wanted to figure out how I can scale up a coaching platform that can really help newer sales leaders get better at their job. And that's where I've created Manage Enablement. And this is really a platform where I'm helping sales managers connect them with sales leaders and learn from their experiences and their mistakes to ensure that they don't make the same costly career mistakes that others have made before them.
I get that. And side by side with that, what could be good too is that that's the sales leadership. A good friend of mine, James Buckley, he works with John Barrows, so JB Sales, right? They have a whole new on-demand platform as well. It's pretty awesome.
Yep.
And that is for the salespeople, not so much the leadership. So that could be the salespeople. Then you have the sales leadership side together. That is just an awesome combo. So I think that's pretty cool. Anyway, I'd like to start with the most exciting thing that I think I have ever talked about, which is what do your bosses not tell you when they promote you? What's missing? What are they, holding back that it's going to be a huge wake up call, really. I mean, it's just getting a promotion is great until you realize what comes with it. That's for sure. So some people second guess it, but usually it's good. It just takes some adjustments. So please, just dive into it, man. Absolutely.
So, I feel fortunate to have been promoted a few times, throughout my career. And, this is honestly straight up from experience. And one of the things that I learned really the hard way was that I had to manage up. That was my boss. I had to manage down, which was obvious, of course, but I also had to manage sideways. And when I talk about managing sideways, I mean managing my folks in legal, in finance, in HR, and really ensuring that I'm building on those relationships to ensure that my team is able to be successful in what they are doing, which is helping clients, get better at what they do. And in order to do that, I had to learn the hard way how to manage sideways. So this is one of the things that none of my bosses have ever told me before.
Yeah, you just described the story of my entire life. It's just going across division, everything, tying them together. And if you could be that bridge, you're one of the most valuable people or persons at that company, hands down. Yeah. Being able to manage sideways, being able to do cross-division work, being able to understand the trials and tribulations that the others have to deal with. Because guess what? A company's just a big network. It's a network system with cycles. Everything starts and everything stops. When something stops, something new will start in its place, and then it will travel throughout the system that we call a company that we separate into divisions and hierarchy. So one thing always affects all of the other things, whether you want it to or not, some more than others. But I mean, I do this all the time. I do solutions architecture for a sales process. So it's just pretty much creating the problem architecture to show, here's everything that's wrong. This is how it affects everything else. And this is what we need to do to correct it. So here's your solution architecture versus the problem architecture. Create the diagrammatics for that, show them how it all connects. And then how fixing one thing, such as targeting, or fixing one thing such as communication between the marketing and sales team to have a better MQL to SQL passing ratio, right? That could affect the rest of everything. And it's ridiculous of how it all connects like that if you really break it down. So I'd like to hear your standpoint on it, because I have more of an operations and analytical standpoint on that stuff. So getting it from more of the people support side of things is going to be interesting. So yeah, please go a little bit further on that if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember this is the second time that I had been promoted in my second role, which was selling life insurance. And at that point in time, I wanted to ensure that we were creating products that the market needed. Because again, I was at the front line. I was the one speaking with with my customers, with my prospects. So I sort of understood what they really wanted and what that product gap,
such a wild concept, right? Isn't that crazy? Oh my God. Apparently it's the most unknown thing in the world. It's like the city of Atlantis. Everybody thinks it's there, or they might think it's there, and they're like, oh yeah, of course. But really it's just nobody's ever found it for whatever reason. So I love to hear that. Building something that people want. What an amazing thing.
Right, and that's so crazy, right? And again, right? I'm obviously dating myself at the time when we didn't really have the types of systems and processes that we have today. But it was all about ensuring that the organization was getting in line and getting closer to their customer, and that should be a very, very simple thing to do. And here I was, a seller that had been promoted, trying to get my voice through the entire cloud. And I'm just like, hey, how do I do it the right way? And one way was product. You guys have no freaking idea as to what my customer wants. And y'all are just like throwing out products for the sake of it. And the other way is,
if we build it, they will come, is a lie.
Exactly, right? And like the other way was, I was like, hey, let me get you 5 of my customers, and just 5. I'm not saying big or small. Let me just get you 5 customers. You speak with them, understand their pain, understand what they really want, and let's start there. And fortunately, I chose the latter. And going through that entire process, and as simple as it sounds, is build a product what your market needs. It was extremely complicated, and it was now, all right, now let's have products speak with these guys, let them learn. Next, let's bring in finance. Next, let's bring in legal. Let's bring in everybody so that we are going to market as one unit.
You right? Did say, I do want to just jump back a second, where you said building something that they need not necessarily is the best idea. It's what they want first, and then you have to kind of slip in what they need, because what they need, but it's not what they want. So you kind of have to mask it with what they want, so they're getting what they need as well to actually drive that total value through. Absolutely. It gets weird sometimes, and that's what makes it so damn complicated.
Absolutely. And going through that entire process was just so painful, and I was surprised as to how painful it was, because it was really ensuring that folks within finance who weren't really used to having conversations with clients, or legal who should be used to but weren't really used to speaking with clients, were now having and now we're being forced to speak with clients to understand how things really work. And that was really my first lesson. And I know that I've summed it up, but it was painful. It was a very, very, very painful journey to just start working sideways. And the worst part of it is when what you're trying to do is going to help the organization go 10 steps forward, but then you have so many blockers in your way that are basically saying, hey, stay, and stay within your lane. And that's what's crazy too.
They block it. And a roadmap should be versatile. Things should be able to move. Just because it's on the roadmap doesn't mean we're getting to that point and then we can talk about adding that to the end of it. Well, what if it's a need that clients have, many of them have, that needs to be done first? Oh, well, that's on the calendar for September. Well, we need it yesterday.
Yeah.
So why don't we start building it next month when the developers are starting to, really kind of settle down from what their last project was, and then instead put that in its place, then move things around a little bit to adjust for it so you can appease them. Because if they're not happy, guess what? All of the money that's coming in is from keeping the people that are paying you, that we call customers, happy. If they're not happy, they leave. That's it.
Exactly. It's as simple as that. And, sometimes people tend to forget what they're really supposed to be doing and why they're doing what they're doing. And that's when I think managing sideways is one of the most critical jobs for a person who's in that managerial position. Because when you're in that role, again, going back to what my boss didn't really tell me, I assumed I had to just manage my team and I had to report back to my boss. But no, it wasn't really reporting back to my boss. It was managing him too. And it was also managing everyone else.
Management should always go up. You manage up and you manage down. So managing down is how most people do it. That's the baby boomer, corporate era way of doing it, where your superior is going to tell you what to do and there's no questions asked, which we have proven time and time again that it's just straight up not effective.
Absolutely.
What about them? They're not getting their job done. Ever had that boss, like, oh, the boss doesn't do shit, I have to pick up all the slack, blah, 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 complaint. Well, guess what? That boss should get fired, number one. And number two, you need to manage up, saying, why isn't this done? You need to say something to them. If someone fears speaking up to their boss or keeping them accountable for something, you're working in a toxic environment. Yep. If you're working in that toxic environment, you should probably leave that place because it's toxic to you and it puts you in that really negative mindset. If you fear your leadership, that's a problem. You should respect your leadership and you should be loyal to your leadership. It's not about fear. Fear tactics do not work. Just validation is the strongest thing you could do for somebody. So there's validation is number one, and then there's love, and then there's fear, right? And love has a lot to do with respect, and validation is respect at the same time. So validation is the first point of entry right there. So if you're trying to manage up, you need to validate your boss first, saying, hey, you're doing a really good job, and I really appreciate you for, keeping everything together, keeping everybody on track and leading everybody. Though I would suggest that we start working together to start getting some of this work done because it's really been leaving behind some slack. There's some slack left behind. We need to pull that slack and it needs to get swept up. We need to get it out of the way and we need to get it done. And we're relying on you to get that done. So what can I do to help you achieve this? So what can I do to help you achieve this? Or what can I do? What can I pull off of your plate so this can get done? So offering that helping hand, lending the assistance is super important when you're talking about managing up, is that you're not disrespecting them. You are validating them. You are qualifying their work and you're telling them that they are qualified to do this, but it's not getting done. So give me something that I'm qualified to do so that you can get it done and the rest of the team can be successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, let's also add one more thing to that, right? I mean, when you're working with your boss, your leader has to create an environment in which you are able to fail, right? Because that is the only way in which you are able to actually learn. That's the only way in which the organization is able to learn. And that's where, if you think of it, right, most of the largest companies that you can think of right now, they've failed so many times.
My favorite quote from Batman: "Why do we fall, Bruce? Why do we fall, Bruce? So that we can learn to pick ourselves back up." Yep. That's the point, is that you have to fall to learn how to get up. If you're just in a cushioned environment the whole time and you've never fallen, you're being helped the whole time, you're not going to know what that failure is like. People are too focused on what went right, but humans have evolved over thousands of years to acknowledge what went wrong, but never truly dive into it. They say, oh, well, that went wrong. I acknowledge it for sure, but this is what's going right now. So let's just focus on that and not do that again. Well, I know this from doing artificial intelligence analytics all the time. What is defining success versus what is defining failure? There is a shitload of gray area in between where a lot of it lines up where it's the exact same thing. There's just a couple tiny little attributes that make it a success or a failure.
Yep.
That's it. The tiny little fine line. And what is that fine line? How can we do even better than that? It's not just let's focus on what works. Let's find a solution that's even better than that. Let's find something that works even better. So people that go, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, if it's like a chair or something, sure. But that's not how it works when it comes to a living, breathing process, an organic process. So I can appreciate that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've worked with leaders who have given me the opportunity, have given me the space where, where I've been able to fail and I've been able to make my mistakes. And then I've worked with those who have not done that. And I've seen the difference in the way I have performed when I've been given that space. I've seen the difference in the way I have communicated up or managed up when I've not been given the space. And this is not only, speaking from my experience, but nowadays too, right? Whenever that I'm working with newer sales managers, this seems to be consistent. That it's like, we are too afraid to make decisions that may be costly. There are ways to ensure that you're making the right decision. You can look at your data, you can understand your data, you can look at the trends, you can figure those things out. But making that decision and being given that space where if a decision is wrong should be developed.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Decision-making does not always have to be done by a human being because a lot of it is assumption. Decision-making can be done by machines if it's something that has to do with data or interpretation of something. I know I'm partial to it, but the thing is that if you're looking at a ton of different data points and it's not something that you can just easily calculate, or if it's more qualitative data, how are you supposed to understand, you just go with that, oh, I feel like this is the right thing. It's that gut feel. Do you think your gut feel has any type of anything backing it up? I mean, it's kind of, I've seen some of the largest decisions get made or the largest acquisitions or the largest whatever it may be just off of a whim, just a whiff of a little whiff of, you know what, this feels right. Let's just do it. Which usually you're correct because human instinct's not bad, but it could be catastrophic. And there's a whole bunch of different factors that you didn't put into place. Not you, but anyone who's doing this. But it's just that needs to be done differently, is that people need to make more informed decisions. And often you'll find that the people, this actually ties back to what you were saying, the people who are given space and given their room to fail, they often are not making those types of decisions, those quality decisions, and they're not given the opportunity to understand what that means. So it inhibits their growth.
Makes sense. Makes complete sense. I mean, till such time you haven't failed, you haven't learned.
Right? Failing is learning. Succeeding is just moving forward. That's it.
Yeah. It's as simple as that. For
sure. So tied to that, when it comes to structuring a plan or a team or a process or an architecture of a team, when you're putting these things together while working with people, what are you usually focused on first?
This is the one thing that has surprised me the most. And I've worked at, startup organizations and I've worked at large publicly traded companies. What surprised me the most is that most of these organizations, and I'll say 9 out of 10, they don't have a clear definition of their ICP. They don't have a niche down definition of their ICP. And that is where I think things really need to, start. When you understand who your ICP is, what their traits are, what types of, companies' behaviors that they really exhibit, that's when you can start building structure, team, process, all of that good stuff behind it. When you know your ICP, then aligning your team and educating your team around that ICP is a whole lot easier.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So an ICP, for anybody who's listening who doesn't know what that is, if you're not 3-letter acronym proficient, like a lot of us aren't, it is an ideal customer persona. That is what, or an ideal client profile. Either way, it's the same exact thing. It's just terminology crap. So if you recognize it as any of those, that's what it is. And if you don't know what an ideal customer persona is, then that is the thing that you use to be able to target the people that you should be working with based off of who is your best possible target client. That's what that is. And you're speaking my love language at this point. And like, Prateek, we got to work together because, I work with people's ICPs every single day. We develop ICPs every single day. Except, we do it with artificial intelligence, and
Sure.
we can generate one where it's like 6 months of work to develop an ICP. We could do it in about 2.5 minutes, and it's more accurate, mathematically perfected. So that's a fun thing. And I think that if that's what you're doing, we could potentially collaborate on that. That would be a lot of fun, where instead of going through that painstaking opening process, labor-filled process, we could just get that done right away. So you could focus on helping them fix the problem and work with it much better, faster, stronger. And I think that delivering that will allow you to use the time that they're paying for in order to get shit done, rather than turning wheels and arguing about it. Because often actually tell me this, how often do the people that you work with try to just inlay bias into their ideal customer persona, where they're just like, no, this is who we target, even though it's wrong?
I'll say in almost all of my conversations, the sales managers who I usually work with, they have some idea of what the ICP is. But if I were to say, all right, tell me where they work, tell me what types of organizations that they represent, tell me what their ideal income profile could be, what their educational background could be, tell me how they buy, they would have no idea. So I think, when you get down to that level where it's so clearly defined that you can actually picture your ICP, working everything around that is so much more easier, right? Then the next thing is, how do you really align your team? That's easy. How do you structure that team? How do you build your sales process? All of that stuff becomes a whole lot easier when you're able to really figure it out in the simplest form and the niche down version of what your ICP is.
Right. And something may seem super complex, but really in the end, if you break anything as complex as anything at all, like the human body, for example, if you were to break us down to the tiniest little pieces, we're just a bunch of tiny little cells that have a mitochondria and a nucleus and what is it, a ribo something, or I forget the pieces of the cell. My God, that was probably 14 years ago. So yeah, it's just, that's all we are. We're just tiny little cells working together to create a system. So if you break it all down, it really is a bunch of simple stuff mashed together to make something that seems like this giant, ugly beast. That's all it is. If you can do the same thing with all of your processes, with any of your processes, that's the key, is just break it down until it's the tiniest little chunks so that they're little digestible morsels that you can handle.
Yep.
Easier said than done, of course.
Easier said than done. It takes a whole lot of effort. Obviously, it takes a whole lot of keeping your ego aside too.
I deal with that a lot when I'm consulting people. Is just no, it's not like that. I do it this way, and I get these results. I'm like, hey, listen, it's not a contest.
Yeah,
I'm literally asking you a question. Answer it honestly. It's not good or bad. It's not saying, are you the best salesperson or not? It's saying, what is the truth behind this so that we can make it better? Yep. And it is just it's completely shattering the reality behind the ideas that I'm better than that, I'm the best. But often salespeople have high confidence or high ego, which is usually a good thing. It depends. But then you don't want those people as your sales managers. Some people are better at executing than they are managing. Making your top players your sales managers is usually not a good idea, because all they do is try to close all their own deals to put their numbers up and don't care about anybody else because they want their commission.
Rob, that's so funny that you say this. 3 days ago, I actually posted on LinkedIn, and it really just sounded like a rant at the time that I saw the video. Once again, I was like, holy shit, it was just a rant. It was about, stop promoting people just for the sake of it. Stop promoting people because they are your best sellers. Stop promoting people without really giving them the right guidance or the right tools.
Your best sellers are your worst managers.
Absolutely. Unless you have given them, and unless they have, they've been able to display certain characteristics that sort of show that they can actually lead people, unless they are able to also sort of, understand that their goal today is no longer about themselves, but it's actually larger than that. It's about.
I was about to say, are they willing to help others? Do they help other people in the office? Do they help others grow? Do they give advice? And do they set their own personal goals aside?
Yep.
Or perhaps make goals around their coworkers? That's when you start looking at someone who could be a manager. But even more so, if they're setting goals for other people and helping them really grow and learn that much, managers manage. So they make sure everybody gets everything done and all of the requirements are met. Leaders lead. And leadership is what inspires. They're the ones who set the goals, the heights. They keep everybody working toward the same mission. They have purpose, so giving them that purpose, and they have clear goals in mind so that they could see where the vision is taking them. So someone to pretty much portray to the teams that they're working with, if it's division-based, right, what the top of the leadership is projecting as their vision. They're making sure that vision flows down through the rest of the team, and the goals will align with that vision.
That's for sure. That's for sure. I mean, I had someone on my team at my previous role, who is and continues to be their top seller, and he is someone who understands everything really well. He understands, how to get his stuff going. He understands how to drive the vision forward with his customers. But if I were to give him, or if I would have given him any opportunity to actually take people forward, he'd be able to manage 2 metrics. He would never be able to take people 10 steps forward. He would never be able to lead them forward because, at the end of the day, as you mentioned, there is a clear distinction between managing and leadership.
Yep, there is. And a good leader is going to try to bring everybody up, provide them increase, level them up until they are better than themselves.
Yep.
A manager, on the other hand, would not be able to handle doing something like that, in the sense where the mindset is, if this person becomes better than me, then they're going to take my job. That's a very managerial way of thinking, but not that great of a manager. If a leader has any thought in their mind like that, they should be removed from the company immediately.
Some of the best leaders that I had the opportunity to work with were always thinking of ways in which we would be able to, number one, replicate them, and number two, ensure that they were no longer in their roles. And the reason, that when you are able to do that for the rest of your team, number one, yes, selfishly, you're sort of growing your own career forward, of course. But what you're really doing is that you're helping other people fill your shoes.
Right. And you need to often, not need, but you should look for it at the very least, hiring people that are better than you. That's the thing, is that you want to hire people who are better at something than you are, because it makes it easier to help them become, where they need to be in the position, as long as they fit and everything like that. But it's just putting people in the right place too. Some people need to move horizontally.
Yeah.
So you said sideways leadership or horizontal leadership. Sometimes you need to be able to horizontally move. Let's say if someone wants to prove that they're going to be better at something, let's say if they're in sales and they're performing pretty well, they're a pretty average employee, and they're asking you, listen, I'm going to bring so much benefit and strength if you move me toward marketing. I want to be, I want to work in marketing. I want to work in the social media initiative and everything, because that's where I really strive. That's where I strive to be. That's where I want to be. Let them do it. Let them test it, like a trial base. Okay, let's see what you look like in that position, or start giving them some tasks where it's splitting them away and slowly move them over to there. But personally, I like to just, okay, well, you're going to start marketing today. You're going to have a week to see what you could do and then go for it. So it's kind of the sink or swim, except you're supporting them the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to as an add to that, one other way to also think of it is that if someone wants to move sideways or just in case that they want to move up, it's great that you're hitting your quota today. Right. But the real question is, how are you helping others reach their goals? It's great that you're able to take on projects that people give you, but what initiative are you really showing to stand up and take on a project that's going to hopefully help the organization, either move forward externally or improve on their processes, internally.
I cannot agree more with that, because a lot of people, they're really good at getting things done. They're good task finishers, if you will. Yeah. I don't know what they call people, busy workers, right?
Sure.
Except when you take the initiative or even come up with your own idea with a process or something to like level up the company or really drive increase to the company itself, whether it's in your division or not, but just ideating and trying to make something happen with your own initiative, that is something very powerful that a lot of people fail to do.
Yeah.
They don't take the initiative to not only, first off, it needs to help you grow as an individual, but it also needs to help the company grow just as much. If you just do it for yourself, that's called selfishness. If you do it for the company, that's called helping the company, and you're being selfless. But then often people won't notice because you're doing it just for the company, not for you. So you're not showing personal growth. It needs to be a mix between the two. You're growing and the company's growing, and it's noticed. Not saying that, you have to say, oh yeah, no, people need to notice this because I'm doing this, and this. I need to take credit for it. Well, if you're doing it the right way, there's no reason to have that mindset behind it. It's very noticeable and it's very clear.
Absolutely. And here is a simple example, right? Talk about sales versus finance. In almost every organization that I've worked at, sales is always butted heads with finance. Finance is always butted heads with sales. Why does sales need so much discount? Why can't finance just give us the term?
Oh God, don't even get me started on discounts. If you discount the product as leverage to sell, if you're discounting the price, you are discounting your product. It means your product's not good enough to be that price. It is the stupidest thing. Your price is your price, and they have to get over it, because if there's not enough value where you need to make it cost less, where now it's valuable enough, one, your pricing structure may be wrong or off based off of the perceived value, but that would have to happen all the time. Or two, they're trying to leverage that to save people money or do them a favor. Whatever. It's not the consumer market. In business, things cost how much they cost. There's no discounts. That's not how it works. So if you're discounting your product to drive sales, it can work, but then you're also discounting your product entirely. The whole idea behind it. If it doesn't cost that sale amount, people don't want it.
Yeah. That makes sense. And one of the ways to of course build and ensure that that you're able to show growth is, going back to that simple example, sales finance. How do you bridge that gap? How do you work on that relationship, right? One of the ways could be as simple as, hey, finance, here's what my client needs and here's why they need it. I've already had a conversation with them about why we are sticking to what we need, but here is the value if we were to give them XYZ more, right? And that's when you start building on your relationship. That's when you start working together as one unit. That's when you start representing your organization as one organization rather than, hey, my finance team just told me no. It's as simple as that, right? There are ways in which you are able to build your relationships. There are ways in which you're able to go to your clients, and there are ways in which you're able to increase your internal brand, as in within the organization, that can help you get noticed, and hopefully that helps you help your boss to promote you.
Right. Not even just that. You're starting to break down the divide within a company, because that divide where it's, oh yeah, the marketing team, the sales team don't talk. That's a severe problem. The sales team and the finance team don't talk. That's also a severe problem. Yeah. And I like what you said with the whole thing, going from a salesperson and speaking to finance and doing it that way. Your method right there, I actually think is incredibly intelligent. I've never actually seen it that way before. I've talked to a lot of people, man. I've never heard it that way before, but that makes perfect sense. And that's something that I would recommend to people to do. Absolutely. Is making that connection that way. Because if the sales team's working with the finance team, the finance isn't just lighting the building on fire because of all of this lost revenue. They know what's going on. And I like how you said the why. What people fail to do is they fail to say why.
Yep.
What's the intended outcome? What is the benefit of this and why? If I told you to do something right now, like, hey, do your laundry right now. No, screw you, guy. That's going to be the answer. I'm not doing that. Shut up. Don't tell me what to do. But could you please do the laundry? So could you, or I suggest you do the laundry now. If you just end it there, it's polite, but then it's like, okay, yeah, I'll think about it.
Yeah.
Why? I suggest you do the laundry now because there is a maintenance person who's going to be coming in and fixing it, and it needs to be empty. So you've had it sitting there for a while, so let's get it done. Oh yeah, for sure. Let me take care of that. Done. People need the reason why. You don't just say, do this. Well, the first thing in their head, well, why do I want to do that? Why would I do that for you? I don't want to do that. So it's telling someone to do more things. It's It's suggesting rather than commanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I think people tend to forget, as a seller, you aren't only representing your organization, but you're representing your client too. And when you're representing your client, and when you think of it that way, you're taking that client and you're taking them internally, and you're representing in a way that is making sense for the overall partnership. That's when you really start making changes.
Yeah, like I like to think about it this way. Sales is pretty much you're brokering part of an association or an organization that you work with somebody else. And you're trying to make sure that that person is getting the fairest deal. They're getting the value that you're selling to them, and that they're going to be happy through the process. Think of yourself as a broker, not a salesperson. Sales, the way that it sounds and the way that society has made salespeople, people run away from salespeople. Oh, I don't want to be sold to, right? No, you're really just brokering a service. That's all you're doing. And I think if it's worded differently, I mean, for example, in Google, they do not call their salespeople, and they cannot be called salespeople because the word is so toxic. Google doesn't allow it. So, oh, look, she's talking to me right now because I kept saying it. But right. But that's such an important factor. That word's been given so much toxicity and negativity. Why not just call them something else? Business development. That's where that came from. Business development representative. That's the. But then that kind of, it's like, okay, what do you really do? I want to buy something. So really, what can we call it? Google makes it more of like a customer success person.
Yeah, I mean, why not just, I don't know, just like call it like a simple solution provider or something like that. A value-driven solution provider. I don't know, but again, value is of course perceived differently depending upon person who's buying it. But it could be as simple and as clear as, hey, I'm not really trying to, sell you something. I'm really trying to drive value and help you reach your goals. And hopefully I am the way in which you can, or my product is the way in which you can reach your goals.
And so I'm interested to hear this from you as well. It would be, how would you project a value proposition across the team? Well, across divisions, really. So throughout a team and then across divisions where the value proposition is understood by those different types of minds.
Yeah. So let's think of it this way, right? As you're speaking to your customer, they have their own, needs, and you're trying to hopefully solve their needs through your product. Take that same customer mindset and translate it to every internal team that you work with. What does finance really care about? What does legal really care about? What does product really care about? And when you're able to think of it in their shoes, and when you're able to really, put that customer mindset on, everything falls into place. So for example, if you're speaking with, let's say, finance, once again, since that's been the theme today, sales and finance. And if it's finance, what do they really care about, right? They care about being profitable. Number one. How can you ensure that you're not discounting? How can you ensure that you're still creating value? And how can you ensure that you're still being profitable? It could be as simple as that. How can you ensure that you're able to go back to go back to your finance team once again and say, hey, look, here is a value that is going to drive the organization. It could be as simple as that. Think of them as your own customers, work with them cross-functionally, build those relationships, find success.
Yeah, I mean, one example for finance could be, I want to discount this because it's a little bit above the price point. And it's already been discussed. They see the value, except they literally do not have the money, the budget right now. If we want this customer, we have to be able to drop the price simply because of their budget. That's the only reason you should ever drop price, if it's outside of their budget and they still really need it and want it and they show all the factors. If it's not affordable, rather than them going to a competitor, why not cut the cost a little bit, give them a bit of a discount, but in exchange, let's say you're selling a month-to-month product where there's a subscription model to it, right? If they want to commit for 1 year, then we'll cut the cost by 20%. So we give a 20% discount, but you have to commit for a year, paid month to month by contract.
Yep.
So now it's month to month at that cost, but now they're in it for a year, and that is on a signed document. Now the finance team is really happy because now they have ARR. That is an annual revenue cycle right there, rather than the month to month, which is you can't take loans against that.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. That's definitely like another, another is a great example. You can do that so that this way you have your customer tied in, you have them for at least that 1 year, and now you also have everyone internally that's also been taken care of.
Right. Exactly. Now the finance team is happy. Oh, wait, annual instead of monthly? Fantastic. Yeah, give them the discount. Now that is guaranteed money coming in. You would hope, or there's a lawsuit. But then the legal team's happy because they're not paying and they get to sue them. So it's all good, right? That's how it goes. And if you can find those connections to create those connections and bridge the gaps, that makes you one of the most valuable employees at the company. Being able to do that, or being able to speak their language, such as if you could speak, that's something I prize myself for. I could speak engineer, I could speak designer, I could speak marketer, I could speak salesperson, I could speak business development, strategic partnerships, or high corporate. The only thing I do not know how to speak is economics. My God, no. I understand the statistical math behind it and everything, but the terminology and how I'm not, no, it's not happening. So that's where I get lost, is just the terminology and what all that is. If they show me a financial document, I'll go, oh yeah, I'll know how it was calculated, how it was done. But ask me to explain it to somebody, no. Nope. And if someone were to explain it to me without giving me the actual thing itself, nope. Same thing. Yeah, I wouldn't understand what they're talking about. But with you, I mean, what languages do you speak in that sense?
Well, I've born and bred back in India, so of course speak Hindi. Fortunately, that I grew up there, and I grew up in a city that's called Mumbai, where we have people from all across the country coming in, because of which I was able to also expose myself to like another language that's called Gujarati. Mumbai is in a state that's called Maharashtra, so I need to understand Marathi, which is as in that language, and weirdly enough, English is, and that's our business language. So these are four that I've had to understand. I'm now married to a Brazilian who speaks Portuguese, so I don't understand Portuguese, but I can pick a few words and I can sort of join a few words together to sort of understand the overall conversation.
Right, because in the end, really, language syntax. I meant business languages, but that's okay too, because it's cool. But if you can understand, if you know more than one language, it gets easier to learn the next language, because the consistency in the syntax is usually there. But when there's different syntax to the language, other languages follow those other syntaxes. Often there are a lot of things that align, but then also don't align. So it's easier to understand because based off of the context and the syntax, you can pick up on it faster because you're multilingual. So I think that's a pretty cool thing. I wish I was. I know a bit of Spanish, and I know a bit of Italian, but that's about as far as I can go. It's just pretty much my entire family speaks French, and I just decided not to learn it. So I was that guy, and now I'm upset with myself. 14-year-old Rob would have said otherwise, but Oh man, that's funny. No, this is great though. We are right on the time too, so that's fantastic. I want to say thank you so much, Prateek, for coming in. I've learned a lot from you myself, and I'm sure that everybody listening has too.
Thank you so much, Rob, for having me here today.
Oh, for sure. So if anybody doesn't know, this podcast is brought to you by White Rabbit Intel. If you want to know more, win more, and close often, it's sales enablement artificial intelligence that people are now calling the Match.com of sales, which is pretty interesting to me, but I think it's pretty catchy. Anyway, thank you for coming, and please follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or wherever else you'd like to go. And if you're going to mention us or call us out or anything like that, please use hashtag DTRH podcast, or follow the hashtag and use hashtag sales enablement, or follow that hashtag as well. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you another day. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Down the Rabbit Hole podcast for new episodes weekly on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pandora, and YouTube. If you'd like to apply to be featured on the podcast or recommend a featured guest, please feel free to email us at theteam@whiterabbitintel.com.